about staying, Amma Syncletica said, "If you find yourself in a monastery, do not go to another place, for that will harm you a great deal. Just as the bird who abandons the eggs she was sitting on prevents them from hatching, so the monk or the nun grows cold and their faith dies when they go from one place to another." Our friend Moses the Black again. A brother came to Sketis to visit Abba Moses and asked him for a word. The old man said to him, "Go, sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything." Sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything. One of the things that the Desert Fathers most frequently return to is the problem of the rootless ascetic, the person who is always looking for the best place to be. This isn't quite good enough. I could be really holy if I was somewhere else. The old man who is looking after me here in the desert is not quite as spiritual and inspiring as some old men. I'm not quite sure who they are, but I'm sure I could find them if I left and looked. That's the problem as it presents itself in general terms of stability, but it's analysed with even more wit and perception by the great Evagrius at the end of the 4th century, when he provides the first sustained discussion in Christian literature of the problem of what's sometimes called acedia or axidy, the sort of listlessness, depression, restlessness that comes out of boredom. You're in the cell. It's a hot, sticky day. It's nearly lunchtime, but it feels like a very long time to go. You've had a rather dull morning, washing or plaiting reeds to make baskets. It's a long time since breakfast. Is this life really worthwhile? It doesn't feel very holy. I ought to be making more progress. But then again, the way you really make progress is to go out and be useful somewhere. Why don't I go to be useful somewhere? Why don't I go and visit one of the brothers who'd love to see me? I might have something useful to say to them. Why don't I go to Alexandria and make my name as a great servant of God's poor? Why don't I... And the hours move on, and the sun rises higher in the sky. And Evagrius, with great perception, identifies a feeling which I guess is known to all of us in varying degrees in the routine of our lives. How do we stay with ourselves? How do we stay in the cell? The problem of the fact that unreality always looks so much more attractive than reality. Unreality always looks more attractive than reality. And so we always think, if only a few little circumstances were a bit different, I could be a much better, nicer, more interesting and holier person. And while it's undoubtedly true that I could be a very much nicer, more interesting and holier person, the temptation to be avoided is thinking I can get there by being somewhere else. Now we might use temptation and stress as an excuse for moving on. This is clearly not working for me. I ought to be somewhere else. The fathers used to say, if a temptation comes to you in the place where you live, do not leave the place at the time of temptation. For wherever you go, you will find what you are running away from is there before you. Stay until the temptation is past, so that if you depart, it won't cause offense, and you won't cause distress to others in that place. You don't solve the boredom, the itch and ache of living with yourself by changing where you are. And it's put very vividly in another of the anonymous sayings, warfare is everywhere. Warfare is everywhere. There was a brother who was a hesychast, that is, a practitioner of deep silent prayer in a monastery, but he often got angry. He said within himself, I will go and live apart, alone, and if I have nothing to do with anyone else, my anger will cease. So he went away and lived in solitude in a cave. One day, when he'd filled his jug with water, he put it on the ground and it fell over. He picked it up and filled it again, and it fell over again. He filled it a third time, put it down, and it fell over again. He was furious and picked it up and threw it at the wall. and he recognized that he had been deceived by the enemy. He said, "Since I have been overcome, even in solitude, I'd better go back to the monastery. Warfare is everywhere, but so is endurance, and so is the help of God." So he got up and went back. Everywhere there is warfare, and staying, the most difficult job in the world, of just doing the next thing you've got to do. Once again, from the Anonymous series, which has a whole cluster of sayings on this. A brother asked an old man, "What shall I do? My thoughts trouble me. They say you can neither fast nor work. At least go and visit the sick. This is charity." The old man said to him, "Go, eat, drink, and sleep. But don't leave your cell. You must realize that it is endurance in the cell that leads the monk to his full stature." And for 3 days the brother did this, and then he began to suffer from boredom, Axidy. So he found some palm leaves and trimmed them, and the next day he began to plait them, and as he was laboring, he said, "Here are some more palm leaves. I'll prepare them, and then I will eat." He'd finished the palm leaves and said, "Perhaps I will read a little and then eat." When he had done some reading, he said, "Now I'll chant some psalms." And so by the help of God, he advanced little by little, till he reached his full stature. The extraordinarily prosaic character of holiness, which consists in doing the next thing. A very difficult thing for us to come to terms with when we would like to think that being holy requires of us being extraordinary. Extraordinary, that is, in our own terms. We would like to be noticed. We would like our lives to be dramatic, to speak in compelling ways. And here are the Desert Fathers saying to us, do the next thing. Eat, drink, sleep, plait a few leaves, or whatever the equivalent is in your domestic situation. And again, there is here a very clear and a very important commitment to the notion that you can't hurry the processes of growth. I'd like to be holy. I can make myself holy by being somewhere else or being someone else. The last thing I want to do is the first thing I have to do. I need to start, but it's very difficult to start because I want to finish. I quoted Syncletica earlier on hatching the eggs in the cell. She also writes, or says, "There are many who live in the mountains and behave as if they were in the towns. It is possible to be a solitary in your mind while living in a crowd, and it is possible for one who is a solitary to live in the crowd of their own thoughts." Solitude in itself can be a very crowded place. But if we learn what it is to be solitary in a crowd, we've learned to carry our cell with us. Because our solitude becomes again an expression of that fidelity to who we are and where we are before God. And all that we do, if we are learning to be solitary in a crowd, all that we do comes to be an expression of faithfulness. The fleeing that we were thinking about yesterday, running away, is not running from the real world, but running into it, running into reality from the various kinds of managed and manipulated unreality which we habitually live in the midst of. Hence, everything comes finally to staying, pledging the body. Only in the body is the soul saved. It can sound, can't it, as if going to the desert in this tradition is going into a kind of nowhere. Going into the desert is not going to be nowhere. It's going to discover a very particular kind of somewhere. To be yourself, your body, with these people in this place, with the sand and the rock, and the extraordinarily annoying monk in the next hut, and the intense boredom of basket making. Anchor yourself. You just have to be there to make this your place. Only in the body, through the body, is the soul saved. Only as myself, my body, pledged in this place, am I healed. And being my body pledged in this place is being with, pledged to, the others God has given me here, A here that may be a monastic community, a here that may be a family, a here that may be a church, full of people with whom I'm in all sorts of deep disagreement. Because it's not only in the monastic life that we think I could be so holy if only I was somewhere else. We all of us have somewhere in our minds that wonderful dream of the real church that we ought to be able to occupy. The real church that's full of people like me. And the church that God gives me is, of course, dramatically different from that. And the pledging of my body to the actual ecclesial community that's there, with all its faults and its horrors and its nuisances, its frustrations, and sometimes its outrages. That also is part of what God asks of us, because only in the togetherness does healing happen. God has spoken to us in particulars. God has anchored the divine life in a body that literally lived and died on this earth, a body that rose from the grave, and a body that now exists in the concrete reality of embodied Christian people by the gift of the Holy Spirit. If that's the case, then our healing is bound to be connected with the where and the who and the when. That's where we are meant to be. That's where meaning and glory descend. That's the cell. And as we turn repeatedly to God in the silence of contemplation, in the ordinariness of daily duty, just once in a while perhaps, we catch a glimpse round the corner of our vision of the fire that actually surrounds us, in which the Son of God moves with us in the body and through time. A desert filled with flame.